Hello and welcome back to CraftCon. I'm so excited to hang out with my friend Mal. Mal, do you want to introduce yourself to anyone who might not know who you are?
Sure, yeah. I'm Mallory Cooper. I write science fiction under the pen name MD Cooper, where I have about 120 books. And I also help authors with a lot of different marketing things, and I'm pretty well known for Facebook ads, which I've been working with authors for like 8 years now.
Yeah, I'm so excited because so often when we talk, it's about Facebook ads. And I don't
Mhm.
know if I've ever had a conversation with you about like craft, even though you're one of the most prolific authors that I know. So I'm excited.
I am too, actually, because I enjoy writing books more than I enjoy advertising them. I actually like talking about the process of writing and how to get a lot of books written. So I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, well, on that topic, we're talking about blocks here. So like you must have come up with a block or two in those 120 books. So like how do you define blocks and like what's a big one that you've seen that you've
Sure.
had?
Well, I mean, yeah, I've definitely hit periods in books where I'm just like, I don't know what to do next. The characters aren't speaking to me, um, or the book feels boring, right? And I'm just like, I'm bored writing this book. I'm certain people are going to be bored reading this book, so I don't want to keep going. And I've had to struggle with that like a bunch of different times. Some of them has been like, for me, I think they fall into two categories. One is the creative well is dry. Um, and that means I wrote too much, I wrote too hard. I'm not sleeping well, I'm not eating well. It's things outside of writing that I need to go take care of. I need to take care of myself. I need to take a week off and just read some books or something like that. So that's sort of, I think, um, stuff I think every person has to kind of solve on their own. But when it comes to the actual book itself, I think that almost every single time that I've come to a point in a book where I'm motivated to write. I want to get the book done, but I can't get it done. Either I don't know my setting well enough, or I don't know my characters well enough. And so I can't. My method of writing is I ask my characters what they're going to do next. I'm like, you're in this situation. What are you going to do? And if the characters are like, well, I don't know, it means that something's missing, and I have to backtrack and figure out what that is.
That's so interesting. Mine is what is the thing you will hate most? Like that's what the question I always ask my characters. I'm like, what's the thing that's happening right now? In what way could I make this worse for you?
It's so mean.
I know, but like, so like I subscribe to the idea that like every genre has like a thing you can always put somebody through. Like one
Mhm.
is like in a romance. Like if ever you're in a place that there's not enough tension, just have one of the main characters kiss somebody who's not the other main character, and like boom, you can just do that for or put them in and put those two people in like naked times, or like if it's a murder, it's like kill somebody. If it's like a thriller, it's like blow something up. It's like there's always that like one moment, and so when I'm not going back on that crutch, I am like, but like it's just my feeling is like this is just not bad enough for you, huh? Because if you don't know what to do, then like I'm not making this uncomfortable enough for myself or for you.
That's interesting. I don't write books with a lot of internal conflict. Most of my conflict is external, so I don't fall back on that. But I could totally see it for someone writing internal conflict, how that would make a lot of sense. For me, my conflict's almost always external. I write like the A-Team or
Right.
Band of Brothers kind of thing all over and over again. But I do have a similar thing to make them kiss somebody else's. I just kill someone.
Right.
Which you can't do in a lot of romance. I mean, you could do it in some romances, I guess, but yeah, for me, I was just like, oh, I'll just off a character, and that's going to add some conflict, and it's going to motivate the characters to do something, and it can oftentimes shore up the setting and give me a frame to work with. So that is one way of doing it. I actually was trying to write a sci-fi romance one time, and there just wasn't enough conflict. I couldn't. I'm not particularly skilled at writing internal conflict. Um, so I was up against that. I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I made it so that the two main characters tried to kill each other. That we're
Yeah.
supposed to be romantically
Sure.
involved. Instead, they tried to murder each other. Then the rest of the book was them like going after each other and then realizing um, that they actually needed each other. And I kind of actually managed to get the sci-fi romance in there while still just having all the mayhem and chaos that I'm used to writing.
I love it. And yeah, my I have a proofreader and she always messages me whenever I send her a new book. And she's like, I hate you because I know I love this character and I know you're just put setting it up to murder them. And I'm like, yeah, like you got to make you someone like a murder without someone dying without you falling in love with them. Like, what's even the point?
Yeah. I actually had that happen in my third book I ever wrote. Um, I introduced this one character. I'd introduced her in the prior book, and I was going to kill her in the book. And my wife read it, and she's like, you know, I just don't care that she died. So I rewrote it and like gave the character a much stronger role and gave her like a couple of save the cat moments and stuff like that. And then I killed her. My wife was like, "What are you doing? You can't kill her. I love her."
Yeah,
So I ended up
exactly.
killing someone else who my wife also really liked, and I'm pretty sure I'm still not forgiven for that. And that was like it was like 10 years ago at this point.
I mean, those things stay with you though, man. If you do
Yeah,
it, if you do it right, like they're supposed to stay with you. Okay,
yeah, that's
so
true.
your can you talk us through like how you get through, like specifically, like let's bring us back to an actual time that like you had this, and like how did you break through some like one of the story blocks, not the not the I needed to get tacos and then like I went out and got tacos and then I was fine, like but like this actual story block.
Sure, yeah. Well, so one of the ones I think is kind of interesting is my very first book that I wrote, especially since one of the things that you were mentioning to me before we started recording is that only a small percentage of people who actually start writing books finish. Um, and I have always been such a strong believer in if you can just get to the end and write those words, the end, it is so powerful because then you're like, I can do it. I can actually write a book. That unlocks like the ability to sort of just keep going and write more and more and more. So I was writing my very first book that I ended up publishing. I kept sort of running into spots of the story where I'm kind of like, I'm kind of bored here. Like I I kept writing, I would write the action scene and like the cool thing that was happening. And then came time for the characters to reflect and deal with what happened and whatnot. And every single time I started writing those, I'm like, this is boring. I don't want to write this. I don't like this. I want to do all this introspection nonsense and stuff like that. So my wife was just like, just don't write those right now. Come back to them later. So I just skipped all those parts and I just wrote the action scenes. And then when it was all said and done, I'm like, you know what? I don't think I need those parts that I wasn't enjoying writing. I actually can just release this, just roll with this book with just all of the different action scenes. And I always tell people I basically wrote like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark because that just
Hmm.
goes from like climax to climax to climax to climax.
Right.
And there are like really short introspection scenes, but you could almost like just remove them entirely and the story would still work. And so that was one of the ways I dealt with the block because whenever it came, like I said, whenever it came time to write the characters slowing down and reflecting and whatnot, I just got so uninterested in what was happening. And as a result, people loved that book because it just moves so fast. And they never have every time they start a new chapter, boom, it's like a new action scene, something new and exciting is happening. So that's one way that I've dealt with it. The other way, like I mentioned before, is that it usually is a scenario where I've taken the characters, maybe it's characters I know really well, and I've written them in a bunch of different books, and I put them in a new setting, and the characters don't, I don't have a very good feel for the setting. I didn't spend a lot of time world building. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the situations they're used to be in what surrounds them. And the way I kind of write, like I says, I just ask my characters what they're going to do. I'm like, here's your goals, here's your setting. How are you going to achieve your goals? And my characters kind of just tell me what they're going to do. And if they can't tell me, that means I didn't give them a good enough setting. And then likewise, I could also be in a situation where I just don't know the characters well enough, and I realize I'm just writing boring archetypes. And then I don't want to. I run out of juice for writing because I'm like, well, this is just dull and stupid, and people are going to tell this is just a boring archetype. So I literally have to go back and sit down and start, understanding the character more. Maybe I write a short story about like their childhood or like a year or two prior. Could be one of the things I can do. Another tactic that I've done as well is if I'm in that situation where like I'm like I don't know the characters well enough. I don't know what motivates them. I don't know how they're going to behave in certain circumstances. I sit them down for a meal and I write the characters all getting getting together and having a meal. And then it's things like, who's on time, who shows up late, who brings a dish, who just doesn't bring anything, who helps do the dishes right away, who just sits there with their feet on the table. All these different, and sometimes I'll put the villain in too. Like the villain will be there having dinner with all the main characters, and I'll get all the byplay that happens between them will solidify the characters for me,
Mhm.
and I can move on from that. And that also makes great additional copy content to give your readers.
Yeah. So this is going to maybe be a little bit advanced for most of the people that are listening, but I'm interested in this because, like, I find the hardest where I get blocked is, oh my God, did I do this before? Or
Mm,
realizing that I did it before. And I'm like, I've done this before 8 times. Like, I can't do this again. Do you ever have that too?
yes, yeah. So I actually had a period. I've hit the incredibly hard writer's block. So in 2021, I had released, I think, my 120, no, actually, it was the very end of 2020. I released my 122nd book. And it was a complicated book. It had something like 17 POVs and was 145,000 words long. And I had to write the sequel. And every single thing I tried to write for the sequel, I was like, I've written this before. I've written this before. Because, there's so many of these books and everything I write is in the same universe. So I'm like, pretty sure this character has done this thing a dozen times at this
Mm,
point. And like one of the things I always that really hit me is like, I think I've written shootout in a corridor on a starship like 70 times at least at this point. And I remember I've actually done all sorts of crazy things too. Like I had this one time where I had people that were on a ship and they were trying to take control of it, but the people who actually owned the ship were sort of sealed themselves off in the engineering section and had control of the ship and they couldn't take it over. So what my characters ended up doing was starving them out and cooking lots of bacon and like wafting the bacon
mm,
smells into the engineering section because I'm just like I can't write another shootout or like just cut the door open scene. I'm like we need
yeah.
something new. So they took over the ship with bacon. I think that's actually a very valid scenario. So so yeah, definitely I've hit these periods where I'm just like I can't write this thing again. And so what happened to me with the at the end of 2020 is I hit such a hard block that it took me 5 years to get the next book out because I had just written felt like I'd written everything that I possibly could almost with these characters without just repeating myself and having being boring. And it took time to sort of step back, recharge, absorb a whole lot more story to give me new ideas or fresh insights, and then sit down and kind of write it fresh from that point forward.
Was that how you got over that block eventually? Just like time plus reading a whole bunch of other stuff? Or like,
Yeah.
were there any other strategies that you used?
In this particular case, I also had to strip out half of the plots that I was going to write because it's one thing to so what I planned to do is I was going to write a series of 5 books, and each one was going to be around 150,000 words long. Um, and I was going to take all of these characters that I'd had written about in their own separate series and bring them all together at
Mhm.
once. And you can do that when you're opening up a story and introducing characters and mysteries and opening all these threads. And you can kind of like have like some momentous things happen at the end of book one. But in book two, you've got 17 different POVs that you have to inch along
Right.
and then make them have some sort of meaningful conclusion and be relevant to everything else that's happening. I'm like, this is insurmountable, quite
Right.
honestly. Like I
Right.
just I thought like I've got the skill to do this now. I've written so many books, I can totally do this. And at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I don't know if anyone could do this, quite honestly. I think it had the story had to be sliced up more. I think the readers would have been like exhausted too if they had to read that many things where some of these plots nothing happens. So at the end of the day, I just pared down the story to just the most important elements and plus some time and some introspection and whatnot. And that's what got me past it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's probably the one of the big reasons why Avengers didn't happen right after another, right? Like through
Yeah.
the Avengers and then like a bunch of other stuff happened and then like there was another Avengers movie, not like
Yeah.
one after another.
Yeah. If they tried to put all of those events and all those different characters and character development and everything into the main Avengers movies, it would just be such a mishmash of different things that you wouldn't get any satisfaction out of anything.
Yeah, so my wife used to be like, used to only watch the Avengers movies, and she's like, I don't like these, and I'm like, of course you don't like them. They're not meant for you to like. They're meant for you to like if you liked all the other movies. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, like, there's like an event that's happening, so like you're like excited about doing it, and like there's stuff, but with the minute it's over, you're like, what did I just eat? Like popcorn? Like, what is happening here? And like, it takes going to all the other movies and being like, oh, I see how the character development worked before you can come back to that.
Yeah, it's almost like the Avengers movies are the gravy on the turkey dinner, you know. But if you don't have the rest of the turkey dinner, it's just gravy, and it's just kind of and kind of nasty actually all by itself.
Yeah,
But if you've
and
got the meat and potatoes to put it on, then it's good.
well, then you also have to like make sure it's consistent, internally consistent with each regular series, right? Like, yeah, that's I've done that a couple of times. I had like an Avenger style team up in my Gods vs. Chronicles series, and after I finished that, I was like, I need like 8 books to like get back into doing another one of these because like it's just so much.
Yeah,
But like
absolutely.
yeah, one of the things that I did with the Obsidian Spindle Saga series was like I was just like, well, which are the relevant characters? Like now that I should POV. And then like I have other books to POV other people maybe, but like is that kind of what you did? Is like, okay, these 17 people, like only 8 of them have relevancy in this specific book. Like, is that what
Yeah,
you're talking about?
yep, yeah. And then the other people are going to get spin-off series, so their plot lines I opened up will take place in separate series. Um, and that's actually what I had done in the past. I back in goodness in 2017, I wrote this book called New Canaan. It came in at 130,000 words, and there was like a 30,000 word subplot that I only just got started on even. And I realized I can't cram that in, so I split everything off into their own series, and the universe sort of exploded into like 5 or 6 parallel series running along this main anchor series. And and that's kind of what I thought. Like I'm so much better now. I can totally write this all as one. And I realized no, I can't actually. Not for me or for the reader.
Mhm.
So everybody's going to get spun off again onto their own little side series, and then we'll come together at the end, and they'll filter in here and there as things go on.
Yeah.
Um,
So I feel like you uniquely can talk a little bit about this, but like why all in one universe? Like what is the benefit of having besides you just liking it? Like what is the reader benefit of having 120 books in one universe? Like does it help you market it better? Does it like what's going
yeah,
on here? That seems like so many books in one universe.
I mean, I did actually set out to do this from the beginning. I wanted to write like a Dragonlance Forgotten Realms kind of situation where it was this big universe, and you just got to see different viewpoints, different angles of what's going on. You know, you'd hear about events off over there, and then boom, there'd be a story about it. You could like learn more about it. And also in science fiction, you know, there's a lot of subgenres. There's people who want to read like big space battles with some admiral commanding like 1,000 ships doing all sorts of stuff. Some people want to read about colonization stories. Some people want to read about you know, I guess versus nature kinds of stories, which colonization stories oftentimes fall into. Or people want to read like ground pounding mechs, you know, with getting dirty and firing laser beams across the cityscape at each other. And I realized what I could do is I could write all of those stories, put them into one universe, and then pull people in depending on their individual interests. So if they want to read sci-fi romance, if they want to read swashbuckling pirates in space, they want to read mechs, slogging it out in the mud, whatever they might want to read. I've got a series that's about that. And then if they get hooked, they read everything else. So if I didn't have that particular type of series to cater to them, I wouldn't be able to pull them into the universe.
So each of them focus on like a different entry point for a
Yeah.
reader. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Almost every series I write can be its own entry point. There's only about 3 of them out of 23 that don't function as standalone entry points.
yeah, that's really interesting because like we we like it's interesting to start. So that feels so big. Like when you had 122 books ago, like you had this idea. Did you ever just like feel that was like an overwhelming amount to even conceive of? Or like how does one actually go through the process of writing 123 books in one universe without being like overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of it, or is that like the joyous part for you?
It has its overwhelming parts. I mean, I did use co-authors to help get a lot of stuff done. I personally don't think co-authors accelerate. They just sort of bring new ideas.
Mhm.
I generally could write a book faster myself than I could with a co-author, but they would have ideas that I would never have had, which I think is far more valuable, especially trying to make a massive universe because my one life experience and POV personally can't be enough to like fill this entire universe. I haven't had enough experiences. I don't know enough things. I'm not, a broad enough person to do that. Maybe someone else could, but certainly not me. Um, but when I first started, I didn't know it was going to be that big, but I also wanted to give myself the room to be that big because I read so many books before where um, they solve the problem, they defeat the big bad, and the universe only ever really presented that one big bad as the only thing out there. But then the author wanted to write more books, and so they, pow, look, there's a new big bad who's even worse than the first guy, but he never got mentioned before for reasons.
Right.
I didn't want to do that because it drove me nuts. So I want to create a universe where you're like, there's always dragons at the edge of the map, and everybody knows it, and they could arrive at any moment, kind of thing. And that way, when they do, it's not surprising to the reader that they do, and then it just constantly is giving me new ideas for things that could come in. Um, so I did set out making a world big enough to do all that. Also, I spent before I even started writing, I spent 2 years doing world building, researching science, making maps, like studying star charts, down to like where I was figuring out by the type of star and the kinds of planets it may or may not have, how humans would actually move out into the galaxy and colonize using NASA star charts, looking at like a couple thousand different stars near Earth. So I really spent a lot of time building this world, but I didn't want to have to do it all over again as well. And I think that's also slows authors down a lot too. If every single series you write is a whole new world, the world building can chew up a lot of work, and you have to constantly re-explain. You have to explain all these new things to the readers. For me, once my readers get in, they just sort of know what all the words mean. They know what the setting is like, and they can just dive in and just start going.
Yeah. Okay. So a follow-up question to that is like, how did you know 2 years was the right amount of time and not 4 years or 1 year? Like, how did you actually like what happened? Because so many authors are like, I'm just going to research forever. So like, how did you actually take that momentum and start doing it?
I did sort of set out with I had like a list of things I needed to solve. I need to solve like what kind of weapons they would have and how they would work, propulsion systems that they would have, and then understanding sort of the star field around Earth and then a timeline. So I did have like a set number of things I need to figure out. And I in the past, I failed to actually start writing series because I just world built it forever. I've
Hmm.
got like a fantasy map on my wall, and it's massive, and probably from the looks of it has 500 or 600 cities listed on it, and the roads and the trade routes and everything. I developed all that and never wrote it, so I did have in the back of my mind that I actually wanted to write this story. So I only researched as much as I needed to actually get writing, world build as much as I needed to actually get writing. And I guess some people might think that 2 years is still a really long time for that, but I did give myself like a set of questions I had to answer. Once they were answered, I'm like, I guess I got to write this thing.
So
You
did
know,
you make that list before you started out to research? Like, and did you
um,
add to it as you were doing it?
I definitely did add to it because as I researched, I learned things I didn't know. Because my books are hard science fiction. So as I learned new aspects of physics, for example, or I learned things like different types of stars are more likely to have planets, and some types of stars, like red dwarfs, which are the most common stars, produce X-ray bursts that would sterilize the planets around them on the regular. Um, so as I learned that, I had to sort of retool and kind of go different directions. But there sort of reached a point where it kind of became obvious to me, like, okay, the research is slowing down. I don't need to learn new things. I have a solid grasp of rocketry and this, that, and the other thing now. So um, the point of diminishing returns became fairly apparent to me after a while, and I knew that the next bit of work was to actually do the writing.
Do you remember why you didn't write that fantasy series?
It was actually because the world building got too big.
Hmm.
That trying to hold in my mind all the different locations and customs and cultures and everything like that was actually too much. And I made the project too daunting by world building too much.
It seems like you have to hold a lot in your head for 120 books though. So like was it like you piecemeal like you like had an overarching thing the second time and then you like only learned what you needed to learn at the, so I feel I find that in my own work. I've got like 38, 43 books in one universe and I'm like I can't hold all of this in my head. I couldn't imagine writing one more book, let alone 80 some odd more books in that world.
Well, my books are broken up into there's multiple separate like timelines. Like there's a bunch of books that happen around the year 3000, a bunch of books that happen around the year 4200, and a bunch of books that happen
Mm.
around the year 8900. So they do sort of fit into these self-contained segments. And then sometimes I am like, I want to write a book, but I can't bring all the baggage. So I'll find like I'm gonna write a self-contained story in this little far off star system over here that doesn't intersect with anything else. And that was actually one of the reasons why I made this the massive sci-fi universe because I can do that, right? Like it can have all the same words, it can have the same feel, the technology lines up and everything like that, but it doesn't actually have to include any characters or plot lines or anything from any other story. And it gives me the freedom too to like basically write a whole new thing that can feel fresh and exciting for me, but also pull in my readers because it's in the same universe.
Yeah, it's an interesting trick that I use. It's once I leave a city, I can't come back to that city until I blow that city up or fundamentally change it in some reason. So it's like I never actually have to remember what the city is because by the time that anyone would see it again, it's like been destroyed or it's been overtaken by another thing or like it's the 10,000 years in the future or like they've
Right.
something happens but like I've always enjoyed using that trick to be like how do you do a world so big it's like well like this is the one thing I don't actually have to remember things except people's names.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's like I think along those lines too is like I don't ever mention other than like maybe one character. I don't mention anybody's eye color.
Hmm.
I don't mention hair colors. So the only way might know my character's hair color is if you see it in the cover of the book. Um, that way I don't have to remember all these details and then get it wrong or something like that. It's just sort of all implied. Also, I think the advantage too. Sometimes, like if I get stuff wrong, people are like, "Well, this character, you described them like this, and then you described them like that." I'm like, "That was 1,000 years ago." Like, they're allowed to change.
Right. Yeah. It's like
And at that point,
the foundation problem, right? Like, because that's the book. I don't know if you watch the show Foundation, but like a lot of the characters, like they intercede over hundreds of years, but
yeah,
they like don't. The universe changes, but like
mhm,
they pretty much stay the same because like they're in cryogenic freezing, or one of the characters is like he's like a hologram or like one of those things. Just all of those like interesting tricks that make you can use to make worlds feel big without overwhelming you as the author and having to know every detail of it.
yeah. And I should also add that one of the advantages for me is because I'm writing hard science fiction. If I need to look up how something works, I just go on Reddit or Quora or whatever. Like the answer isn't something that I have to remember. It's just a fact that I just have to go look up, which
Yeah,
helps out a lot too, because I
sure.
kind of have the entire scope of human knowledge as my research tool.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap up to a close, are there any other like big blocks that you've seen either yourself or someone else go through that like had a really interesting way through it or something that like maybe was not what you would expect to work that worked for you?
I think I've kind of covered all the ones that work for me. Um, I do know that something that happens to my wife is kind of interesting is that she finds sometimes she'll get a block and it's because she had a character do something out of character at one point.
Hmm.
And it creates almost like a almost more of a mental block for her than an actual story block. So she has to go back and just reread the book and find the point where the character did something out of character, and then she can write forward from that point again. um, which to me sounds horrible because I have to delete words. I hate deleting words. Like if I wrote
Right.
those words, they stay. But she'll throw out 50,000 words if she did it wrong,
Yeah.
and that's the only way she can get past her block. She can't repurpose that part of the rest of the book. She has to go back to where the character did something wrong, out of character, and just kind of move forward from there.
You
So
know, I think that I used to be of the opinion that like there are no blocks, there are no real
mhm.
blocks, and now I'm of the opinion of like Oh, those blocks are your like body telling you or your mind telling you like something is wrong. And
Yep.
like it's been trying to tell you quietly. And just that
Yeah.
every time you do it, it tells you more and more and more and more and more and more forcefully until like finally it's like, look, you're dealing with this now. I'm not gonna move on until you deal with this.
Yep. I completely agree. It's that there's something is wrong in the story, something is wrong with your characterizations, your plot, or something. It's been and the creative side of your mind has run out of ways to deal with it because you've got this problem. It's like I can't slap band-aids on this anymore.
Right.
You know, the story's broken. We've got to fix it. And that
Yeah.
could be, like I said, like the fact that you've just written the same scene 50 times or something like that. You know, that could be it too. But
Right.
it's yeah, the creative side of your mind can't solve the problem anymore with plot armor or whatever it might be. You actually got to go and figure out what it is.
Yeah, I love it. Any final thoughts before that was a great way to end, but do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I think worst case scenario, if you're blocked and you can't figure out what it is, just skip that part.
Yeah,
Go beyond it. You know, the answer may come to you later on in the story if you can kind of just jump over it. That's if nothing else works, try that. You know,
I
it's
love it. Yeah, I used to write inward with I
mhm.
write inward with comics, so you start at the end and work backwards too. Yeah, like if
Yeah,
that works for you, or start just like
absolutely.
skip one chapter. I don't know, skip 10 chapters.
Yeah, whatever it takes. Jump to a part that is interesting to you again.
Right.
That's the most important part.
Yeah, I love it. And often you'll realize you don't need that part and the stuff between anyway to go back to your first point.
Yep, you give the character just make an offhand comment about something, and that covers what happened.
Yep.
Move on.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today,
You
Mal.
bet. Awesome. Thanks.